There is this increasing issue of people wanting such a toxic trait that has been exacerbated with something that is really growing within society and is becoming quite an epidemic or even a pandemic in itself. Hello, I'm Hayden.BloomfieldSSLtd and welcome to the channel. So Napoleon Hill's 15 major causes of failure. I'm currently reading Napoleon Hill's Success Habits. If you haven't already read Success Habits, definitely recommend it, as well as Think and Grow Rich especially. Jump on that and have a read if you haven't. And I'll go through one key chapter in terms of 15 major causes of failure. So stick around to the end because you may find you resonate with some of them and may be a little bit guilty of honing in on some of these failures. Take some tips from this and then maybe jump onto the book to get some further pointers on how to avoid these 15 causes of failure. First as well, shout out to Georgie for lending me the book, it's been really good. I'll just go through this video, I'll put my own little touch on each one, and if it resonates with me, if I've been guilty of it, dive into a little bit about that and how I've overcome it as well as suffered with it. Number one, drifting through life with no definite purpose and plan to attain it. I wouldn't say I've ever really been guilty of this. I've always been driven to strive for something. I'm always targeting myself, whatever it was, whether it's a hobby, in life, in business. I'm always like, right, this is what I want to get to. Here's how I'm going to get there. Let me reverse engineer what it looks like to get to that step by step. So I've always been quite good at this, but I think it is something that a lot of us are guilty of in terms of just kind of floating by, not having a definite purpose. There's not necessarily anything wrong with that but I think if you can have something to strive for, even not necessarily like business goals, numbers, financials, but just happiness. Surely every single one of us should have happiness as a goal to attain. And it's something that we constantly work towards, constantly strive for, and look at improving, just making daily habits to make sure we can get closer and closer to that. Number two, unfavorable physical hereditaries at birth. Bear in mind, this book was written decades ago, and the research started like in the start of the 1900s. Some of this stuff is incredible, it still resonates, but I guess it's human psychology, human behaviour, we don't really change all that much. But this is something that I think can, in its own form, with the utilisation of modern technology, be quite a benefit. I'm not like, obviously you're still limited, you have got some sort of hereditary issue, then that's unfortunate, but there have been a lot of examples of people that have managed to use that as a way to elevate their platform, to elevate their story, and use it as something to build upon instead of having it as a weakness, using it as a strength, which is something that is really extraordinary to see, and it's something that's really motivating and inspiring. If you are like stuck with number one, to see someone that's overcome number two, for example, can be so motivating to really give you the reality that you can motivate yourself, you can move forward, and you can strive and overcome, regardless of the sort of boundary, the setback. Number three is meddlesome curiosity in the affairs of others. Gossip, especially with social media now, like strolling through Instagram to see what people are up to, it's quite easy to start to get influenced into being engaged a bit with what people are up to, what they're talking about, what are they wearing, how they're dressing, where they're going, where they're eating, what diet they on, blah blah blah. And it's something that I think with social media has just intensified, augmented that sense of urgency to know what people are up to, and been quite a detriment and exacerbated the issue of looking at other people's, comparing as well. Comparison is such a toxic trait that has been exacerbated with the advancement of modern technology in terms of social media, in being able to compare ourselves directly, indirectly to the highlight reel of people's lives. Something to really consider here. I was listening to Joe Shetty's podcast recently. He had, I think I was going way back to an old episode, he had Dr. Daniel Amen, and he spoke about his 18-40-60 rule. That being that at 18, you're so conscious of what everyone else thinks of you, whereas at 40, you don't really give a crap what anyone thinks about you, you just go about doing your own thing. And then at 60, you realise no one was thinking about you anyway. If only we could realise that at 18, that no one's really thinking about us, they're all too busy worrying about themselves, we can crack on and live the life that we want to live, and set the goals we want, despite what setbacks we've had. Number four kind of closely aligns with number one, but it's lack of definite purpose as a life goal. In number one, we talked about having a definite purpose and a plan to attain it. This is just, as a life in general, having something that in life you want to strive for, that you want to achieve. And as I said, like one of the best things I think it can be is just happiness. If we can just be happy, fulfilled, content in what we're doing, that will be the ultimate thing to achieve. Number five, inadequate education. Now that's not necessarily schooling, that's not to say you didn't go to college, you didn't go to uni, you haven't got a degree, you're not a philosopher, you're not a doctor, you're not a PhD, or whatever qualification label mark you want on your name. This is to say education, life. Elon Musk has said about, doesn't care about what grades you got in school, what qualifications you got, cares about the school of life. What have you achieved? How can you solve problems? If you can do that and you've shown great skill, then you're on board in the company. And education now, with modern technology, we have education at our fingertips. It's so accessible. Just jump on YouTube, Google, all these different platforms that we can just find information and learn from. Number 6, lack of self-discipline. How many of us are guilty of this? Especially, I'm going to drill this in, as I said, these are from 100 years ago or so, decades ago, and yet still resonate so much more, or resonate even more with us today. Self-discipline. We've now, in a world of more distractions, as I said, we've got technology at our fingertips, we can access any and all information essentially, but the detriment of that is that we can access any and all information. I can study an incredible achiever, look at their life, see their interviews they've featured in, the podcast they're on, different content they've created, and learn so much, absorb all that knowledge and information. However, I can also watch funny cat videos. I can sit on Netflix, I can scroll through a TikTok and get stuck in a spiral, just video after video. And it's having that self-discipline to engage in what you want. Ultimately, what goal are you trying to ascertain? Are you serving that goal by what you're doing right now? Yes, we can have time off and unwind and reflect and just have recreation, but that can be a component of working towards this ultimate goal. We need to rest, rejuvenate in order to start moving forward again. We don't just grow linear, we need to take the steps. But it's about balancing that and not spending too much time or looking at the wrong things. And really, is absorbing toxic information on social media going to be helpful for us? I'd say toxic information on social media, but there's plenty of things that we do to distract ourselves. Number 7, lack of ambition to strive above mediocrity. And I think this is something that, well, generally is what most people fall in the category of. Whether that's just something that people ignore or something they want, but they feel that they're inadequate and won't be able to attain it, and therefore just let go of the dream, the goal, the ambition, or it's just something that people could not care less about. But it's around having a definitive purpose that we talked about at the start in number 1, having that thing. It hasn't got to be about making millions, making billions, building a company, building this platform, creating content and becoming an influencer. It hasn't got to be these things of extremes. It can be something, as I said, happiness. It can be about being able to balance your time so that you're working part-time and half your time is spending recreation with your family, walking your dog, whatever it is you want to do. What do you want from life? Rather than just fitting into the status quo of the modern life we live in, of 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, is what you do. Weekend, you're pretty much just trying to recover from the fact that you just work all week and you spend the other hours commuting to work, getting up, getting ready for work, and then at the weekend you're trying to have to sort stuff out for work or do a bit of work just to make sure that next week isn't too chaotic. It's about identifying what exactly you want from life, how you want to craft it, and make sure you can put that into a goal, reverse engineer it, and have a step-by-step plan of how you're going to action it. Number 8 is ill health. A little bit out of control, but in the book Napoleon Hill goes on a lot about our own control over our mind, our mindset, the positive versus the negative. And if we can have that positive affirmation within us, and especially when it comes around to illness and health and how we perceive ourselves, our mind, our body, our soul, that can often have an impact on how often we are sick, unwell, and how severe that can be, the consequences, and how quick our recovery can be. So it's something definitely to take into mind when you are under the weather, ill, regardless of how severe it is. He talks about an extreme example of his son being born without hearing, and yet he attains his hearing despite being told by medical professionals it's not really something that's likely to happen. Number 9, unfavorable environmental influences in childhood. Again, this is something that, to touch back on the previous point of with modern technology and having that darker start in life, that more unfortunate path to go down, by overcoming that can be such a great platform to leverage out of and be able to move past and use as a flying example in a way to build a better future for yourself. And that doesn't necessarily mean in creating content, creating videos, getting famous and that kind of thing. It can also just mean a case of if you start a business, if you have a dream and ambition, a goal you're moving towards, is the fact that you've overcome such harsh conditions in younger years or traumatic experiences. You've overcome that. The fact that you're trying to build a business, the fact that you're trying to find happiness, the fact that you want to move to another country, it's like, well, do you really need to be too fearful of all of these things and too scared and be contemplating the risk too much if you've grown in adversity, you've grown in a traumatic setting, that you've overcome that? You've literally done what so few would be able to do. You've done an extraordinary thing already just by overcoming that and being able to be in a balanced place where you can move forward and live day to day. Really striving for your dreams, your life goals, ambitions aren't much, are probably a lot easier than what you've already overcome. So use it as a way to leverage yourself, to be proud of yourself and move forward. Number 10, and I think most of us can be guilty of this, lack of persistence to finish what one starts. How many times have you started reading a book? How many times have you started listening to a podcast? How many times have you started watching a film, a TV series, a Netflix show? How many times have you wanted to do something, started that business, come up with a business plan, the idea, tried writing a book, tried starting a blog, tried creating a podcast, tried becoming a YouTuber? How many different ideas have you spun off? Me personally, I've had loads of failures, but we learn from all of them. If you can take each failure or each idea, goal, ambition that you've disregarded and moved away from, if you can take that as a learning curve to see what you did wrong, what you can move forward with, and what skills you need to acquire, because it may even be it's something that you strove for, but once you've got in the nitty-gritty of it and started getting into the details of it, you weren't actually that interested in. So it's something to consider. Number 11, and something that is really growing within society and is becoming quite an epidemic or even a pandemic in itself. Number 11 is a negative mental attitude, and it's something that if we can make our goal overall of just finding happiness, contentment, fulfillment, it's something that we can, in a balance, find much more positivity within our mind and become far more optimistic in moving forward, so that the things that we strive for become more attainable and easier to achieve, because we've got a mindset that is focusing on finding the solutions and not dwelling in the problems. Number 12, lack of control of emotions at heart. We can all take things to heart, and things can be quite emotional, especially if we put our heart and soul into it, whether it's a breakup, someone quitting from your company, or someone rejecting you. It's all things that we need to overcome with our ego and have that inner voice in us, that inner dialogue that we have. Is it something of compassion, or is it something of reaction? Are you reacting to a situation, or are you taking in and being ready to respond? Are you reacting or responding? And that's something that can be a huge condition of whether we strive and learn and overcome and achieve, or whether we dwell, get stuck in a rut and end up going backwards. And I've had that plenty of times, and it's something that I think I've got a lot better of as I've got older. And I think that's something that comes with wisdom a lot for all of us in terms of just getting older, thinking on the 18-40-60 rule that I mentioned. And it's something that in that transition from 18 to 40, as you're getting towards it, you realise no one's really thinking anyway. And so you start to panic less and start to relax with your ego, handle rejections a lot better. Number 13, the desire for something for nothing. And I think this is something growing in a world of influencers, of social entrepreneurs, of those that have got the limelight through Love Island, reality TV and whatnot. There is this increasing issue of people wanting something for nothing, and it's something that can become incredibly toxic and incredibly detrimental, and will be a huge problem for you if you're not willing to put work in. And I've been guilty of that myself, wanting to find shortcuts and like get rich quick, get happy quick or whatever. But the reality is it all takes a lot of work, and even a lot of times when you see get rich quick, people that have got rich quick, a lot of the time when they go into the deep analysis of it, it's not got rich quick, it's through this journey that took years, decades. I then was able to execute and attain wealth very quickly because of what I did 10 years ago, because of what I did 20 years ago, which is the case. I don't really know of an example of people that have got rich quick. There are examples of people that have just invested in the right thing at the right time and just got a bit of money, put it in crypto, bought Bitcoin 10 years ago, and now they're multi-millionaires. But often that acceleration and rise to fame, to fortune very quickly is very toxic and detrimental to our own souls, our own minds, and our own mental health in itself. So something to bear in mind, often the long journey. And I think that with like my own YouTube channel, like really how many people are watching this video, but I know that the longer the journey is, the more commitment, determination it takes. The more I have to explore what I'm doing, the more I have to critique myself, the more I have to evaluate and analyse what I'm doing well, what I'm doing wrong, what could be better. Whereas if I uploaded a video and instantly had 10,000 subscribers and carried on, as soon as I lost a bit of momentum, I wouldn't be so engaged with it, wouldn't be so devoted. And also I wouldn't be so critical of myself. I'd be like, oh, I get reviews and results anyway. Whereas because I haven't got anything, I haven't got any viewers, subscribers, I haven't really got much of a platform, it means that I'm therefore critiquing myself, I'm analysing a lot more, I'm looking at what I can do to increase my skills, to increase the quality of what I'm putting out, increase the content, increase my efforts to ensure that it does improve and get better. Number 14, and again, this comes into the world where we've got access to almost anything at our fingertips. It becomes a lot easier to do this, and that is procrastination. A lot of us love a good procrastination session of just, why do something when you can relax, sit on the sofa, be comfortable. Being comfortable can be comfortable, but putting yourself in uncomfortable situations can also be a comfort in itself, in knowing that you are growing. Growing pains can be very good for you. Procrastination, if dwelled over too long, can be incredibly bad for you. As I think we've all experienced, hopefully you're aware of and can sort of identify it as an issue and then move on and make sure you start doing something a bit more productive. That's not to say, as I said, like I'm not saying this has all got to be around building a business, making millions, but if you are looking like as a key of like finding happiness, are you really going to find happiness sitting watching 10 episodes of a new series on Netflix, eating sweets and chocolates? No. You may think so, but no, realistically, no, you're not. And last but not least, I find there's a bit of a bizarre ending to it, given that they've all got a clear, concise point, whereas this one is 7 points in itself. But number 15 is given into one or more of the 7 basic fears. They being, I'm going to read them off, fear of poverty, fear of criticism, fear of ill health, fear of loss of love, fear of old age, fear of loss of liberty, fear of death. So yeah, that's number 15, 7 basic fears. Poverty, yes, we are all scared. I have that myself of like looking at decisions. If I've grown a bit of wealth myself, I've got financial backing more so than I did before. Do I really want to lose what I've got? And I'm facing that myself in trading. Like, I've got the stock market moving downwards quite a bit at the moment. It is concerning. Am I going to lose a lot of money? And if I lose that money, how am I going to move forward? And I'm trying to reflect on, if that does happen, that's just going to happen. I'm going to lose money. I'm not going to be... It's going to suck. I'm going to have to deal with a lot of issues in that, and it's going to cause some problems. But I can move on from it. I'll overcome it, and I'm young enough to know that I can battle on through it. Criticism, number 2. Yes, we all have this, especially, again, I keep going back to this point of like, modern technology, you've got access to everything, but also it's fundamentally incredible that you've got access to criticism. You can have an idea, put it up there, and get instant response, instant feedback that before the world of social media, you could not get that feedback for days, weeks, months, sometimes years, because you didn't have that instant connection to people. They weren't able to give their opinions and feedback on something. Admittedly, because we can do it, and do it so with so much anonymity, because we can do it anonymously or just as this person on social media, it makes it easier to become a bit of a keyboard warrior, but it does give you access to that feedback. But yes, we are very nervous. I've had this myself massively, especially like going into making content, making videos, talking in front of a camera. It seems ridiculous and crazy and a bit scary and daunting, but it's something that you can overcome, and you start to forget the criticism. I had it when I wrote my book, the first book that I wrote that no one really knows about. People criticised me for that and judged it, commented on it, but I'm like, I sat down. Like, when I did panic and get nervous and scared, I guess, but then in the end I'm just like, dude, I wrote a book that's 30,000 words. Like, it takes a lot of commitment, devotion and determination to achieve that. Like, mock it all you want, but I wrote a bloody book. Number 3, fear of ill health. We've already had this and covered this. Fear of loss of love. I think that's an element of rejection as well, but yes, having that commitment, and especially if you've got a situation where you've got a dream and ambition, a goal, but you've got the mortgage to pay, kids to feed, school run to do, can you really let go of that? If you've got this structure set up in your life, can you let go of it? It's something incredibly difficult to do, but is there a way to make little micro steps to impact you on a macro level to then eventually make a whole life alteration? Fear of old age. And when I was at Diary of a CEO live events, Stephen Bartlett on stage made a huge point on this that reflects well and is hugely valuable at this, and it's about, if you fear that you are too old to engage in something, how dare you discard yourself of an opportunity? How dare you deny you being able to pursue what you really want to because you think you're too old? Can you breathe? Yes or no? If you can breathe, good, you're good to go. You're not too old. If you can still breathe, you're not too old. You're young enough because you're still bloody living. Go for that goal regardless. There was if you know I'm a skateboarder, there was a skateboarder that rose to a bit of fame recently because they're 90 years old in Japan. They are 90, they've just started skating. Having a whale of a time, great fun. Yes, admittedly they can't do what like a 15, 20-year-old would be able to do, but regardless, they're 90. There was a dude there was a little mini documentary, there was a guy that's 60 talking about how incredible it is to see someone 90 in the sport, and he's talking about he'd been in sports all his life, he's been used to falling over and getting back up again and overcoming injuries, and yet this guy at 90, he's never done anything like that. And yet suddenly he's taken on extreme sport. So you're never too old. Loss of liberty. I think this is something maybe more of like older times and not so much modern. You have quite a lot of free speech, but there is a huge rise of cancel culture of if you do say the wrong thing, you can be cancelled, but that's, I suppose, when you've got a platform. I can't really see how that would be viable with someone that hasn't got a platform. But if you are someone that's fearing of starting out, whereas if you've got that platform, yes, there is a fear of loss of liberty. Stephen Bartlett talked about this on his latest episode of Diary of a CEO with James Smith, where they discussed cancel culture, and Stephen talking about building a cancelless stream of revenue so that even if you are cancelled, or those avenues that could be cancelled are all cancelled, but it still leaves you with a lifeline that will support you and keep you on the lifestyle that you're living. Lastly, fear of death, which, to go on to Stephen Bartlett's podcast, is something that he often asked a lot of his, maybe earlier on in other episodes, but often asked about, do people fear death? And it's, I suppose, if the activity that you're engaging in could result in your death, then that's something to fear. However, if the activity you're fearing of engaging, the goal, the ambition, the dream, if it doesn't inherently have a risk factor of death, then surely that fear of death should drive you to strive for exactly what it is. You don't want to be on your deathbed regretting. Studies have shown the biggest regret people have on their deathbed is the fear of living to someone else's instruction, not being true to themselves and not living the life they wanted to lead. So bear that in mind. as the 15 causes of major failure. 15 major causes of failure. Hopefully it's been helpful for you. If it has, make sure to like the video, click subscribe on the channel to get plenty more, as I'll be diving more into this book, as well as many other books, and doing some more book reviews. I've done a book review. If you want to see more book reviews, I've done one on Artificial Intelligence by Melanie Mitchell, so check that out, and check the book out as well. And in the meantime, check out Success Habits. Bye.